Donald Trump, as we speak, is threatening to revoke the broadcast licenses of two networks, in particular NBC, you know, the one that's so happy because it no longer has to deal with Rachel, well, forgive me, I'm being premature, Joy Reid, and no longer has to deal, well, it doesn't have to deal with Rachel Maddow anymore or Joe Scarborough or any of them because they're going to be spun off into Versant. But they're still not clear. Because you see, the NBC network, they need those FCC licenses. And those go through the federal government. And they go through the guy who's in charge of the FCC. His name is Brendan Carr. And he's made it very, very clear to all of these networks. They're being investigated for their DEI policies, which he considers and are believed to be, just check with the Supreme Court and Harvard University, unconstitutional. In other words, you cannot give somebody a job just because of the color of their skin. But in fact, that's what was going on. And so now, as Donald Trump considers not only what was going on the DEI front, but also what's been going on in terms of the bias itself. I mean, look, he's talking about a figure of, I think, 97% of the news being against him. I saw 92% at Media Research Center, but here's what he put out just earlier. I guess, would that be the wee hours of the morning or late last night? Anyway, this is brand new. He said, why is it that ABC and NBC fake news, two of the absolute worst and most biased networks anywhere in the world, aren't paying millions of dollars a year in license fees? In other words, he wants to get money for those license fees. Ka-ching, ka-ching. It's funny, guys, because he's always like, how's the government get paid? Why are taxpayers subsidizing anyone? Why shouldn't we be getting something out of it? You know, why aren't they paying millions of dollars in license fees? They should lose their licenses for their unfair coverage of Republicans and or conservatives, but at a minimum, they should pay up big for having the privilege of using the most valuable airwaves anywhere at any time. Crooked journalism should not be rewarded. It should be terminated. And then he went on to say, accept what is written and broadcast in the fake news. I now have the highest poll numbers I've ever had, some in the 60s and even 70s. Thank you. Make America great again. So this is a big deal. He wants to get rid of these licenses. And you know what? He could. And this is what Brendan Carr's been talking about. And this is why everybody at ABC and NBC is freaking out. At NBC, they're freaking out to the point where they are spinning off these cable entities, primarily MSNBC. Over at ABC, they've put The View, you know that show, under review. Under review, which Rosie O'Donnell has interpreted alongside me, it's like the one thing we'd ever agree on, as probably not coming back. The head of ABC, along with the head of Disney, which owns ABC, they've been begging these ladies to try and do different kinds of stories. Can you move to the entertainment space, for example? They're like, no, we want to stick with politics. Well, you stick with politics, and you're going to dig yourself into a very big hole, not just because it's so biased and you don't have any conservatives that have any backbone on the show, but also because, you know, it's expensive to run that show. It's very expensive to run that show. And in this new medium, you're not able to keep up in the streaming. You know, they can't stream on YouTube. Why can't they stream? Well, whatever the broadcast deals are that they have, they're not able to. Similar, you know, cable's a little different. Cable actually really can't stream because they get paid by the cable companies to have that exclusive content. And so sometimes they stream on YouTube. So if you have like YouTube Premium, you'll see them. But then all of a sudden the commercial comes on and it's just these nice peaceful waves or like an elephant walking. And that's because there are no commercials for those cable networks. And the broadcast, that's a whole other thing. And so now Brendan Carr went on to Fox recently and was asked specifically about whether or not The View was really in trouble. And I want you to hear what he had to say. All of ABC, by the way, is in trouble. It's not just The View, but specifically, given that The View has been a point of contention, let's watch his response.
View now in the crosshairs of this administration.
Look, it's entirely possible that there's issues over there. I mean, again, stepping back, this broader dynamic, once President Trump has exposed these media gatekeepers and smashed this facade, there's a lot of consequences. And I think the consequences of that aren't quite finished. And look, The View's got a lot of challenges there. It wasn't that long ago, I think one episode, one show alone, they had to stop, interrupt the show, and read 4 separate legal notices to try to avoid legal liability. So I'm not surprised to hear people saying that their ratings are struggling.
Well, sir, where does this end then?
look, I think we need a course correction. You know, it's time for America's legacy broadcasters to return to promoting the public interest. And just recently, Skydance, which is looking to acquire CBS, wrote letters to the FCC committing to serious change, to trying to root out bias, to putting in place an ombudsman that would address these issues, to returning to unbiased, trustworthy journalism. That's where we have to go. And I think we're getting some wins along the way. It's trust but verify at the end of the day. You know, we're not where we need to go. But I think this legacy media really needs to reorient, or they're going to continue to run into issues like Colbert, where it just doesn't make economic sense to run a partisan circus.
You see that? Colbert was losing somewhere around 40, 50, 30 million. I don't know. The estimates were at least in the tens of millions a year. So no one was really watching, or if they were watching, I guess he was doing decently compared to other late night shows. It was costing the network too darn much. So I have a feeling that The View is kind of a similar situation, because they're paying Whoopi Goldberg a lot and Joy Behar a lot. And, I don't know when their contracts are winding down, but at least from a business perspective, you can kind of just say, hey, you know what? We've cut the cord. Investors would be happy. You're going to save that money going forward. And then you don't have that thing on the air anymore, which causes you to, one, save money, and two, perhaps save a little bit of political headache, because unless you get somebody on that couch, if it's a couch, I guess they sit around a table and chairs, unless you get a couple of people in there that have some backbone and are willing to push back against the likes of Joy Behar or Whoopi Goldberg, I don't think you're going to have a shot. And by the way, no conservative worth her salt would ever do the job, okay? Like, I've known conservatives that have done the job. Justin M., thank you so much. Good to see you here today. I've known conservatives, Meghan McCain did that. Abby did it. You know what? They did not like it one single bit, because you want to talk about a nasty environment to work in. I mean, TV is bad enough. Let me tell you, network TV, no fun. I mean, everybody's out to kill everybody all the time. You go over to The View, that's a whole different ballgame of being willing to kill, right? So great. I'm glad that you were able to catch the live too. We're a little bit later than normal, Justin, today, but I'm glad you were able to join. Reminder to everybody, please, please subscribe. All of this is changing. So the media is changing. NBC is nervous. ABC is nervous. CBS just did this deal. So we'll see how that all shakes out with Skydance.